Welcome to Action Through Acting. My name is Janine Amick, Chief Executive Officer at the Manatee Performing Arts Center. We want to thank you for joining us today in studio at METV. With me today is our producing artistic director, Rick Kirby, and a representative from the Roskamp Institute, Dr. Cheryl Brandy. Action Through Acting started with our organization about 3 years ago. The premise of this particular program is to provide nonprofit organizations in our community a bigger voice about very delicate and sensitive issues. Let me turn it over to our producing artistic director, Mr. Kirby, at this time to give you a little bit background.
Well, we actually came up with this idea because the Humane Society brought a project to us, Bark the Musical, that kind of collaborated with them and highlighted adopting animals and the care of animals, and we thought that was such a great idea, and that collaboration worked so well. The two of us had a conversation about how can we expand that. So you gave me the charge of finding an entire season for our second space that would reach out to different organizations in our community and give them a little bit of a spotlight, so it was kind of a win-win for both our organizations.
So that the audience understands, Action Through Acting doesn't just happen on stage. The nonprofits are provided resources that we can provide by allowing them to interact with our audience on an evening where they can bring some of their stakeholders, some of their benefactors, as well as give them the ability to bring in key volunteers, as well as each night that we perform, they're given a table in our lobby to be able to engage in conversation with the audience. Dr. Brandy, I can't even think of the proper word because for us, partnering with the Roskamp Institute for the production of The Father and dealing with dementia affects so many people. And as we were talking about earlier, there's just a misunderstanding many times with families that there are resources for testing, as well as that this may be a very sensitive subject that people are almost embarrassed to talk about. And so how does the Roskamp Institute see, partnering in a program like this, giving them the ability to maybe reach out to a new audience and tell people this is an okay conversation to have?
Excellent. This is such a huge issue in our community. There's, as I tell people and I tell patients who are sitting in front of me, by the age of 85, 50% of us are going to have Alzheimer's disease. The way our population is aging, the way the disease is progressing. And so early awareness is really, really critical because we know that getting help earlier in the disease is a time when the medications are more effective. It's a time for planning. It's a time for education. And one of the passions of the Institute is destigmatizing the concept that memory loss or something about memory loss is bad. So through our institute offers memory screenings free to people 55 and older, and possibly a little younger for veterans, by appointment. And it's done very sensitively, very discreetly. The individual comes in and there's about a 20 or 30 minute session with a screener. And then that data is looked at and the individual gets a letter. And
can you explain what is the screening process?
The screening process, okay. The screening process is a series of little exercises that look maybe at different parts of the brain and the way we think. So some might be some drawing, some might be remembering some words, some might be reciting some words, maybe it's a little bit of math, very non-threatening.
And non-invasive.
And non-invasive.
Yeah, when you hear testing, you think, is there going to be blood work? Are we talking about genetics? What are we talking about?
I think the word test is not a good one.
Right.
Screening is really
right.
a better word for it. And the individual, again, like I said, at the end of that process, The evaluation is reviewed, and a letter goes to the individual at their designated place. They can decide whether they want that information sent to their primary care physician or practitioner or whatever. It's their choice what they want to do with it. If there's something that is flagged in the screening that looks like maybe there's a problem, they're advised to seek help, but it's their choice in terms of what they want to do with it.
What does that help look like? Is it your diet? How do you plan for this?
For the screening?
Well, if you're diagnosed to say that you have potential to probably have this down the road, what do you do then?
Okay. In terms of, you're asking about prevention, I guess that's a tough one because, there's a number of factors that we know. The latest feeling is anything that's heart healthy is brain healthy.
Oh.
And that's even the Alzheimer's Association has taken that position that anything you do that's going to be good for your heart, from exercise, Mediterranean-style diet, meditation, stress reduction, socialization, taking care of all of your other medical conditions, be it sleep apnea, depression and anxiety plays a huge role, so reducing that. Basically living an overall good, healthy lifestyle.
I'm sorry.
In addition to the screening, that's one step in a multiple of processes, and I understand through what you just said that, then there's specialized physicians that you may tell them that, is necessary for them to go with their family, learn more about. But within the Institute itself, you guys don't stop there. Maybe you might stop there with that one individual. But what are some of the other things that you are trying to do on behalf of combating this disease?
Well, we're a full-service neurology clinic, and people think that, the Roskamp Institute has the bench science, the really sophisticated molecular biology piece of it. And then we have a full-service neurology clinic also with the idea, and people do not have to be part of a research protocol to come to our clinic.
Okay.
So, and by full-service neurology, I'm not just talking, I know our discussion here today is in memory disorders, but also multiple sclerosis is a focus, Parkinson's disease, and just about any other general neurology condition. So, as part of doing that, the goal is to perhaps, when we identify somebody who might have an abnormal screening, take them through a full process of an evaluation, a memory workup, if it's a memory issue, of course, to get as close to we can as a diagnosis in order to help that individual and their families move on and get the treatment that they need and that sort of thing. So the screening is just that very integral part of getting the flow into the clinic or getting people the help that they need. But the ultimate goal is also, hopefully, if possible, they will seek us out also to go through that evaluation. And I think we do that quite well.
That's wonderful. You talked about the family, and and at times when people have been diagnosed with this, they already have probably to a point where they're going because they know there's something wrong, and they feel isolated. Rick, bringing the show, the title's The Father, and why don't you tell our audience, a synopsis of this particular production?
Well, it's a perfect collaboration. The show actually was produced first in France, in French. There was a translation that was brought to Broadway just last year, very successful, won all kinds of awards. And we were very lucky to get the rights to do it because when I got the script, it was still a Xerox copy. They hadn't even published it for actually licensing yet. It centers around the father, Andre, and his daughter, Anne. And it's seen through his eyes, and it's very... you're sort of like in a limbo area. You're not sure, are you in his hospital? Are you in his home? And their relationship, the stress of her dealing with his issues, his health issues, and his confusion that kind of progresses as the show goes along. And it's actually called a tragic farce because it's a very heavy issue, but there's lots of moments that are very funny within this play. And I think that's the way we get through life, isn't it? By laughing at ourselves a lot of time. But we've had several production meetings already, and we're trying to find ways to kind of spark that idea that the wiring is going wrong in his head as we progress through the show. So I think it's got a lot of wonderful possibilities. It's going to be entertaining as well as informative and a learning opportunity for all of us.
Do you think that by providing such a stage for an issue like this will allow people in the audience to feel okay about talking about this at home?
Well, I hope that's why we do this whole action through acting, is that we're highlighting certain social issues that will start conversations, that will make it less taboo. And even, I mean, like you said, how many of us are, either we're going to be dealing with a parent or a grandparent or ourselves, somehow our lives are going to be touched by this one way or another. So it kind of opens a door to start discussions.
Dr. Sherrill, we were talking about how the script itself, and as Rick was saying, at times is a little confusing. And, you can talk directly to the fact that that's a way of life, that, the director, in all intensive purposes, did that specifically because it's providing the audience an understanding. Why don't you talk about some of those confusions that a person who's fighting this disease undergoes on a daily basis?
Well, it is, and there's a different sort of virtual reality, even on YouTube, that people can watch in terms of understanding the sensory deprivation that happens with these disease conditions, and that confusion as part of it, and as maybe some of the executive functioning is changing as part of the process of degeneration, is very, very typical of this particular type of disease, and very, very challenging both to the individual who is impacted and frightened and full of anxiety because things don't quite seem right and they can't make the sense that they want to out of their environment the same way they could in the past, and what's happening to me, and I don't like this, and I'm out of control with this, as well as to those that are around them and going, what's wrong with him? Or why can't he see this the way that, he used to be able to see this? Or why can't we have this logical conversation in terms of meeting whatever the task is or whatever we need to do?
I know that a misnomer for when the onset of the disease starts is that at times there's days of clarity, and then on other days they're not. And talk about what are some of the support that family members can receive in order, how do they deal with this themselves?
Well, if somebody said in a recent panel that I was a part of, these conditions are not about one person. It takes a village to work through this whole process and this trajectory of these kind of neurodegenerative diseases. Each person is different, so some people the memory decline might be just sort of gradual. Other people, it might shift. There are behavioral changes also that go with these conditions that are sometimes very challenging to deal with. And I just wanted to comment on something that you said a few minutes ago, because I always tell people when we're having this conversation about things that are changing in their life because of the disease process, the process still does not take out who the person is. And that, I think, is a really important piece for people to understand. It's a condition that is happening that's beyond their control, like heart disease, like diabetes, like anything else that would happen to them, but it doesn't change the essence of their character.
I think that's important. And then I know, Rick, by reading the script, the director makes sure that the essence of the gentleman stays true throughout. You understand that, he's a loving man, he's a kind man. Talk a little bit about the production and how his daughter is dealing.
Well, I think that's where the true heart of the story is. I mean, that really centers on the two of them. And like you said, it does take a village. Yes, she is caring for him, but it's the people also, as he goes into it. We think it's a hospital. We're not sure. Is he still at home? Is he in a hospital? Because we're seeing again through his perspective. His relationship with those people as well as with his daughter. So I think that those are things that as a part of that living with this disease that you have to kind of take it in.
You know, we started Action Through Acting, as you said, focused on Bark the Musical 3 years ago. We're now in our starting off our third season. I know you just came back from a conference where receiving a whole, stack of scripts to move forward because we know that this works. Why don't you talk about some of the successes or some of the things you've heard about how this series, Action Through Acting, is helping the community at a different level? Talk about some of the things that maybe have been difficult in the past.
Well, we're doing Flowers from Algernon this year, and in the past we did The Boys Next Door, and that deals with adults with learning disabilities. That has been a great topic for us because we also have a work program at our facility. So it's helped me to understand and help deal with them. I mean, that's a personal anecdote for myself just from having dealt with that. But we've done so many of them now, it's kind of hard to keep track of all the different projects that we kind of launched along the last 3 years. But I'm looking forward to the future. Like you said, I have stacks of, I went to all the licensing companies when I was there at a convention recently, and I went to all of them and I explained our program. First of all, they're very impressed that we're doing this, and asked them, what are you excited about in your licensing company that might fit this project? So we have a lot of great things that we can reach out to even more of our community.
I mean, when I tour even people through the facility, and as soon as we walk into Brayton and Kiwanis Theater, I say, this is the space where not only do we provide quality, first-class entertainment, but this is where you stretch yourself as an individual. When you sit in the audience and you see one of these productions, you're left asking yourself either, what can I do to help? Who can I provide this information to that's needed, that needs this, that I've just learned something that maybe I've seen elsewhere, but also about, wow, I didn't know that our community had these resources. I know that this up-and-coming season, we've got great affiliate partners, another 6 of them. I know that we're launching this year with the Roskamp Institute. But how are some ways that our community can get behind the Roskamp Institute, learn more, and then be able to provide the information that they know to the people who need it most?
Well, again, and I think this is really an exciting project because I think, again, that exposure, the awareness, the catharsis that goes with something, like seeing or participating in something like this. The Roskamp Institute is dedicated to research, and the division that I am affiliated with, of course, is for clinical trials. And by promoting awareness and early recognition and diagnosis, getting treated, getting those, you did ask me earlier about the support systems, and there are a number of them in the community. As soon as someone's diagnosed that we make them aware of, you need to get involved in this support network, you really need to get involved with this, you can't do this alone, this is going to become a legal process for you. So all of those things are important for people to understand that there's a whole trail of other factors that have to happen in conjunction with the diagnosis. But the other issue is we have not had good success in our research endeavors to cure or ameliorate these conditions. Alzheimer's, of course, is number one, and then we have another group of dementias that we know even less about. Unless there's more of a focus on clinical trials, and this is a policy statement also, but there needs to be more research dollars dedicated to this. The last time there was a new drug to even help manage something like Alzheimer's was in 2003 or 2004. And so, it's a very challenging condition to do the to research, but someplace like the Institute, the Roskamp Institute, that can do clinical trials is really important for people to have a knowledge about, because as part of their diagnosis, they might be appropriate and they may want to volunteer to be part of one of those trials. And I always tell people, even though participating in a research endeavor may not help you specifically, think about your children, think about your grandchildren and what you would want for them in the future. The other thing we know about clinical trials is that even, there's, with the very strict definition of clinical trials, somebody gets a medication, somebody gets the placebo, and even the Institute is blinded to that. But we know that people who even go through clinical trials, whether they got the experimental medication or not, tend to do better overall, whether that's just because they're getting extra attention as part of being in the trial, whether that's because they, something happens to them within themselves in terms of, I'm doing good for the, for the future and for the community. So that is one of the issues with the Institute, like I said, in bringing attention to this issue, is not only for the individuals to get involved in that network of resources, but it's to get people engaged into thinking about research and what kind of research is being done and how they might participate and help for the future and the cure of these conditions.
As we start to wind down into our last 5 minutes, we say that our affiliate partners are extremely important to Action Through Acting, but I definitely want to give a spotlight in a moment for Rick to talk about the members of the cast. They're volunteers, and a lot of our community, when they come to see the productions, performed at the Manatee Performing Arts Center, are unaware of their dedication. But you directly interact with the directors and also these actors. Now, this particular cast only has 6, but you've been behind the scenes and seen how sometimes such a thought-provoking piece of work, a piece of art, can be very draining. And some of our actors and actresses actually go through self-realization. Why don't you talk about the actors, how this impacts them as individuals? And maybe you have, can remember a specific moment where, somebody just had to stop and step back and remember they were being a character.
Well, first of all, kudos to our actors. I mean, like you said, they are 100% volunteer, and it is an enormous commitment to do a show with us. Our rehearsal process is over 8 weeks, and that is 5 nights a week. So they go to work all day and they come to us and they work again all night in rehearsals. Once they're in the show into production, that's another 3-week commitment. So they are locked out of their lives for at least 12 weeks. So the fact that they do that for nothing but a little applause and praise at the end of the day is just amazing to me at times. First of all, we have 2 stages, let's not forget that. So
yes.
We have a main stage where we do mainly musicals. We're focusing right now on the Kiwanis Studio Theater, and that's where our Action Through Acting takes place. And that's where we really can dig a little deeper. It's a smaller, more intimate space, so we can have more thought-provoking plays and take a more of a chance in selection of there. And it is true that when the actors, they're becoming these people. And when you were talking about this virtual, what is it like to, I want to get that from you, because I'm like, what a resource for an actor who has to play this dementia to then do the research. And our actor who is playing the role of Andre is probably on the verge of 80, 85, so this can be a very triggering point for him, to kind of reassess and think about his own aging process. But we've done shows about about death and dying, about cancer, about religion. All of those are very hot topics that really make you stop and think and reevaluate yourself, especially if you're living as another person who's dealing with those. It really is immersive.
So in the last 3 minutes, I want to take this opportunity for last comments. And I'll start with you, Dr. Brandy, in allowing you to give some final words to our audience about the importance of coming out and supporting a work like this that may provide them insight, but also provides them an opportunity to educate themselves.
I can't think of a better way than through art and through sort of the lived experience piece of this. You know, I deal with, where we are at the Institute, we deal with sort of like the hardcore science all the time, and you think about that, but there's another side to this that has to be appreciated. And so, you know, I think, again, this type of approach to awareness of a problem that is going to impact most of us down the line, and get at the understanding that, you know, getting some help early, that this is not a stigma, this is not a failure on someone's part. And also understanding from the caregiving piece of this that this is really a journey that an individual cannot do by themselves, and that it has as much of an impact on the family and the caregiving team as anything. And I think it'll be reassuring to other people that have been through this journey that they're not alone in this, or if somebody's sensing that maybe this is happening, it's like, okay, it's okay for me to think maybe something's not quite right and maybe we need to get some help, or maybe I need to get some help for dad or mom or my sister or brother or whoever.
I couldn't have said it better, because essentially, you know, that's our goal from what we hope people will take away from actually seeing this production. Rick, comments for the audience?
Well, I think the best way to promote both of us is to buy a ticket and come see this and really experience it for yourself. I mean, like we said, we're there to start conversations, and what a better way than to see a live piece of theater support your community in multiple ways.
Mm-hmm. So, Dr. Brandy, we just want to personally thank you for taking the time to talk to our audience, to educate us. You know, I learned not only prior to this, but even through this conversation, opportunities that there are resources in our community for people to get help. Rick, a personal thank you as always, my right and my left hand, but the inspiration and the vision of the artistic side of really everything moving forward at the Manatee Performing Arts Center. If it wasn't your due diligence in finding these opportunities for us to start these conversations, I think some of these conversations might not be had. Or they'd be had, behind doors in a very, closed off way. I love the fact that we've got people, nonprofit organizations coming to us now and saying, we'd love to participate. We see the value in talking to people, and it does, it alleviates the stigma. You, our audience, I want to thank you for watching. A special shout out to Mr. Clapsaddle and all of his team here at the METV. Also, we want to remind you that tickets are available for The Father. That's opening on August 24th and running through September 10th. Stop by our box office during the day. You can call them at 941-748-5875, or you can always purchase your tickets for you, your friends, and your neighbors at manateeperformingartscenter.com. With that, again, thank you. We hope to see you at the theater soon.